My name's Johnny West from Open Oil, and I'm applying for a Shuttleworth Foundation fellowship for 2016. We need some kind of global regulation of how natural resources are produced. I'm applying for a fellowship to catalyse the open data framework that will support that regulation. Let's take climate change policy. When it happens, it must strand fossil fuel assets. We won't be able to produce even all of the oil and coal that's already been discovered, let alone carry on looking for new fields. So who gets to carry on producing and whose assets get stranded? Not all fossil fuels are equal in development or environmental terms. They can be cheap or expensive to produce. They can power new electric grids in Africa or mansions in Texas. They have relatively lower or higher emissions associated with them. That's going to be a humongous battleground. China, the US, Russia, Europe, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Africa, ExxonMobil, Rio Tinto. We can't even begin to imagine how the geopolitics are going to work out and what the best implementation options are going to be technically. The only thing we do know, if we're not in climate change denial, is that it has to happen somehow. And land and water use aren't far behind climate change as the next planetary boundaries under stress. These too will need global regulation, and that means the same deal for mining, which uses huge quantities of both, as it does for oil with climate change. Some kind of supranational regulation and allocation, perhaps even binding production quotas. Judged by conventional and lazy thinking, this seems radical and far-fetched. In fact, it will be the only way to maintain stability, or sustainability to use the development buzzword, in a fully interconnected world. Without it, resource wars are more likely in the future than they have been up until now. That's the case for global regulation. Where our project of building open data standards comes in is as an essential prerequisite for this new policy world. Just as there couldn't be a World Trade Organization without trade statistics and general frameworks for investment treaties, there can't be any global management of natural resources without the data and standards to support it. If we woke up on December 12th, the day after the Paris Climate Change Summit, in a magical world where the political will to tackle climate change had been solved, we wouldn't have the tools to implement it. That's the piece of the puzzle I aim to solve. The generous support I've received so far from the Shuttleworth Foundation has allowed me to fashion some of the first building blocks. Using open data, we've put financial modelling into public domain. 2 billion people can now, for the first time, go to a map, type in their address, and see if they're living inside an oil block. We've proved you can map thousands of affiliates of multinationals in one coherent structure. And we have, accidentally in fact, created a model for a vertical search engine which surfaces everything extractive companies tell their investors in public domain in one place. Others are adopting our methods. Beneficial ownership as an issue, who owns these companies, used to be about dodgy dictators and their sons. Now it's been extended to consider tax planning by multinationals. Financial modelling is now a part of the transparency agenda. We've got more demand than we can cope with, and credibility which extends way beyond these small offices in Berlin. All of which makes it big picture time. We will deepen and add to the building blocks in the next year. They're proofs of concept in scale, each started separately, but which are beginning to join up to form a coherent picture. So, we will build the map to be global, train 1,000 people using online courses, explore how we can bring local private sector, law and accounting firms into the governance game by skilling them up in return for some commitment to open. We'll move into primary data acquisition, air sensors, community mapping, perhaps drones, which is exciting not just for the gadgets, but because it can create asymmetry of information in the other direction. Let governments and companies play catch up with local communities for once. Just as important, though, the idea of an open data framework needs to get out there. If I can get Naomi Klein to endorse it, Fox News to go ballistic, and an international institution or two to publish on it this year, it'll be on its way. That's what I'd like to do with the support of the Shuttleworth Foundation. Thanks very much.